Welcome back to the channel. My name's Brian Kingsbury. Today we're going to do another Brian Reads the News segment. We got a fun one for you today, something for all you music lovers. We got the 21 very valuable vinyl albums you could have at home. This one's coming to us from MSN.com. Let's get into it. Do you ever wonder if your old records are worth anything? With vinyl collecting surging in popularity, some of those classic albums in your collection could now be worth big bucks. Sealed copies, first pressings, limited editions, and other rarities are the most sought after and valuable, but even regular releases you've played over and over again can fetch big money if they're in good enough condition. Read on to discover 21 classic albums on vinyl that could be worth more than you think. Do you own any? Let's find out. At number 1 on the list is U2's The Joshua Tree, valued at $100. Released in 1987, U2's fifth album was certified 10 times platinum in the UK and shifted 25 million units globally. Needless to say, copies are far from rare, but if you're lucky enough to own a first pressing of the Irish band's top seller, you're sitting on around $100. Identifying a first pressing can be tricky. Many are etched with A1 and B1 on their respective sides in the area between the label and the grooves, but many aren't. In the case of The Joshua Tree, the earliest copies of the album have several distinct characteristics, including several formatting mistakes. These are detailed online music database and marketplace Discogs, a super handy resource for identifying first pressings. Internet retailers and collectors forums can be mines of information too, or you can go old school and get expert advice at your local record shop. Album number 2 on the list is Queen's A Night at the Opera, valued at $230. Queen's fifth studio album, A Night at the Opera, achieved a series of milestones. It was the band's first UK number 1, became their debut platinum-selling record in the US, and was reportedly the most expensive album ever recorded upon its 1975 release. It also spawned Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen's best-selling single. First pressings of the album are valued in the region of $230. According to Atlas Records, these can be identified by their embossed sleeve design and inner sleeve with 3 cut corners. The third album on the list is John Lennon's Mind Games, valued at $250. A sealed copy of John Lennon's third studio album, Mind Games, sold on eBay in February for $250, and a standard specimen in good condition is listed on the platform right now for a not too shabby $70. With the exception of signed first pressings, the most valuable version of the 1973 record is the bumper Grammy Award-winning reissue. Released in 2024, it was limited to 1,000 copies, each retailing for $1,745. The fourth album on our list is The Kinks' The Kinks, You Really Got Me, valued at $420. Released in 1964, The Kinks' debut studio album was titled The Kinks in the UK and You Really Got Me in the US. After its best-selling single, which was a top 10 hit stateside, a sealed copy of the American release sold on eBay recently for $420. According to Discogs, used examples are worth up to $100. The fifth album on the list is the Beatles' Help album, valued at $500. As a cultural phenomenon and one of the most influential bands in history, the Beatles have an enduring appeal that's second to none. The Fab Four have shifted an astronomical number of records, more than any other band, so their records are far from thin on the ground. However, certain albums and specific pressings are incredibly valuable. For instance, a 1965 US version of Help sold recently on eBay for $500. The sixth album on our list today is Fleetwood Mac's Rumours, which is valued at $600. Few albums are as popular as Fleetwood Mac's 11th studio release, Rumours. The acclaimed record has sold 45 million copies since its debut in 1977 and ranks as the most streamed 1970s album on Spotify. A sealed first pressing, complete with the original price sticker, sold on eBay in January for $600. While used copies don't go for anywhere near that much, they can be worth up to around $100 depending on their condition. Album number 7 on our list today is the Eagles' Hotel California, which sold for $700. Likewise, the Eagles' Hotel California is one of the most successful albums of all time, with over 35 million copies sold. Interestingly, the 1976 LP lost out to Fleetwood Mac's Rumours for the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1978. A sealed first pressing sold recently for $700. Used versions, on the other hand, can fetch up to $125. The next album on our list is David Bowie's Hunky Dory, which sold for $780. Hunky Dory is the fourth of David Bowie's 26 albums. Released in 1971, it's widely considered among his best and one of his most influential, inspiring post-punks, new romantics, and more over the years following its debut. Copies of the UK first pressing of Hunky Dory, which have a laminated cover, are the most valuable. Last year, one fetched $780 at an Omega auction sale in the Netherlands. The next album on our list today is Bob Marley and the Wailers' Exodus, which sold for $850. The 11th studio album from Bob Marley and the Wailers is packed with reggae classics, from the title track Exodus to two much-loved singles such as One Love, Jammin', and Three Little Birds. A sealed US first pressing from 1977 sold on eBay in January for $850. The value of used copies vary, but they can fetch around $175 according to Discogs, with the Jamaican release on the Tough Gong label the most desirable. The next album on the list is the Monkees' self-titled album The Monkees, which sold for $900. The world's first manufactured boy band, the Monkees were created from the NBC TV show and became one of the best-selling acts of the late 1960s. Their self-titled debut was released in 1966. A sealed Canadian mono first pressing recently sold for almost $900 on eBay, although used versions are worth significantly less. The next album on the list is Elvis Presley's album Elvis Presley, which sold for $1,200. Elvis's eponymous debut was the first rock and roll album to reach number 1 on the US national charts, landing in the top spot on the 5th of May 1956. Elvis's debut has gone down in history as the first rock and roll album to sell 1 million copies, but Elvis Presley is only the artist's 31 best-selling album, making it relatively rare. For this reason, copies command high prices, with one selling on eBay recently for $1,200. The next album on the list is the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers album, which sold for $1,240. One of two albums in our roundup with cover art by Andy Warhol, the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers was released in 1971 and sold almost 3.6 million copies. The originals feature a real zipper that opens to reveal underwear fabric. The zipper subsequently shrank in size and vanished from later copies. A sealed first pressing fetched around $1,240 on eBay in January, and even used versions of the earlier pressings with the large zipper are highly lucrative, selling for up to $750. The next album on our list is The Doors' self-titled The Doors album, which sold for $1,525. The Doors' self-titled freshman release from 1967 is regarded as one of the most iconic debut albums of all time, so it's very attractive from a collector's point of view. The original US release is the most coveted. A sealed first pressing sold for $1,525 in February, but used copies can fetch a tidy sum too, selling for up to $545. The next album on our list is Miles Davis' album Kind of Blue, which sold for $1,750. Miles Davis' Kind of Blue is widely considered the greatest jazz album of all time. The second best-selling LP of the 1950s, it's also the second most collected album of the 1950s and 1960s after the Beatles' White Album. Given the fierce demand, prices for the 1959 record are super high. A sealed first pressing recently fetched $1,750 on eBay. When it comes to used copies, the most valuable in the US mono pressing with the Adderley misprints and reversed ordered B-sides, it sells for up to $1,200. The next album on our list is the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed album, which sold for $2,850. The Rolling Stones' 8th studio album is highly esteemed among collectors, largely thanks to its cover art. Incidentally, the cake was baked by none other than British cook and TV presenter Dahlia Smith, who was tasked with rustling up the gaudiest and most over-the-top concoction she could muster. Original mono copies of the 1969 LP with a red inner sleeve and poster are worth watching out for. They could earn you up to $650. Factory sealed copies fetch even more, sometimes up to $2,850. The next album on our list today is Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, which sold for $3,230. One of the most successful albums of all time, Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon is the best-selling and most collected LP of the 1970s. Like Let It Bleed, the iconic cover art, the handiwork of British graphic design firm Hipgnosis, is among its biggest draws. The original UK Harvest release from 1973 is the most valuable. It features a solid blue prism on the record label instead of the shaded version used on most other versions. A first pressing sold on eBay in February for $3,230, though the typical maximum price for this Harvest release is around $1,600. The next album on our list is the Velvet Underground's The Velvet Underground and Nico, which sold for $3,520. With its pop art Andy Warhol cover, The Velvet Underground and Nico from 1967 is a dream music collectible. a white mono label promo sold on eBay for $3,520 in February, and regular copies have been known to fetch more than $1,000. The most valuable record by the Velvet Underground is a promo single featuring mono mixes of All Tomorrow's Parties and I'll Be Your Mirror. Only 10 are thought to exist that still include the picture sleeves. One sold on Discogs in March of 2024 for $30,000, the most expensive single ever sold on the marketplace. The next album on our list is The Beatles' Please Please Me, which sold for $7,770. Please Please Me was hastily released by Polyphone in the UK in 1963 following the remarkable success of its title track. The album didn't get a US release until 1987. According to Money Week, the early UK Polyphone pressings with the black and gold label sell for around $7,770. The next album on our list today is Led Zeppelin's self-titled Led Zeppelin album, which sold for $9,235. Released in 1969, Led Zeppelin's debut album is a hard rock sensation that belongs in every well-rounded record collection. The early UK pressings are worth the most money, in particular the version with a turquoise lettering and a super hype credit is most coveted. In 2013, a copy sold for $9,235 according to Money Week. The most valuable Led Zeppelin record is an exceedingly rare, unreleased promo interview. Only 2 copies of the 1979 release are thought to exist, and one was listed for sale recently for $99,999. The next album on our list is The Beatles' Yesterday and Today, which sold for $125,000. The earlier iterations of the Beatles' 1966 US album Yesterday and Today featured the Notorious Butcher cover, which shows the band dressed in white coats and covered in dismembered dolls and raw meat. The image was meant to be satirical take on the way Capitol Records had butchered the Beatles' stateside releases. Proving too controversial, it was swiftly pulled by the record company and replaced with a far more innocuous image. Regular used copies of the original can fetch up to $3,780, while a sealed first state copy sold in 2016 for a whopping $125,000. And finally, the last album on our list today is The Beatles' White Album, which sold for $790,000. The holy grail for many vinyl collectors, The Beatles, aka the White Album, is a top-tier acquisition. Ordinarily, copies of the original 1968 UK release can sell for around $1,400, but the earliest first pressings are in a league of their own price-wise. In 2015, Ringo Starr auctioned off the very first copy of the revered album for a staggering $790,000, making it the most expensive vinyl album ever. Alright, there you have it, 21 very valuable vinyl albums you could have at home. What do you guys think, all you vinyl collectors? What is the most valuable album you have in your collection? Do you have any of these albums in your collection? Let me know what your most valuable album is in your collection. Put it in the comment section. I'd be interested to hear from you. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give it a like. You can go ahead and hit that like button now. And if you really enjoy this sort of content, consider subscribing to the channel.